Rick James took nearly every secret with him to the grave, but not all of them. In his final year alive, he dropped a bombshell to close friends, revealing that Motown had been hiding the truth for decades.
I didn't relate very well over there. I mean, sure, I mean, there's a lot of music came out and success for Rick.
Behind those perfect smiles and polished records were 5 women whose real lives were nothing like the sweet, innocent image the world adored. Motown crafted these divas into flawless icons. Motown's protected women, as Rick called them, faces shining with perfection, carefully guarded from scandal. But Rick had his own name for them, the Hidden 5. Motown never wanted anyone to know about. According to him, these weren't just singers, they were lightning in human form. Wild, powerful, and way too real for the label's clean-cut machine.
And all that other stuff, but I mean, it wasn't. I think the bad times are more than the good times. I learned a lot and I got a lot of good things out of it. But now I'm with Warner Brothers and I'm happier. The whole ambiance of Warner Brothers just makes me happier. It's a family.
Behind the glimmer and stage lights, the truth simmered. Whispered affairs, secret hotel chaos, and midnight studio tension that would have shocked the world if it ever got out. Motown buried it all so deep that even its biggest fans never suspected a thing. But Rick made sure the truth wouldn't stay buried forever. He wasn't about to let Motown's perfect mask define the story. From the 1960s through the 1980s, the label ran like a spotless machine, polished, strict, untouchable. The women were packaged with soft smiles, elegant dresses, and church girl charm. But Rick swore that when the camera stopped flashing, Motown turned into a completely different world. One full of secrets the label would have done anything to hide. Hitsville wasn't just a studio. It was an after-hours playground where the music never stopped.
The action's gonna be, fucking strange. But it was great once we got out there.
Expect them to react to you in the way that they did, to really be a part of what was going on stage?
No, I didn't. Not because we didn't know, Like over in the States, it's people like are real crazy before we get on, you can really hear.
Sessions stretched till 4 in the morning, and when the doors locked, things got real secretive. Behind those soundproof walls, private rehearsals turned into whispered encounters, and sparks flew between singers, musicians, and producers like it was part of the job. Power ruled every move, and desire hid behind every curtain. As Rick James once warned, if the public knew even half of it, Motown would have burned to the ground. Diana Ross stood at the center of it all. The ultimate Motown illusion. She was the label, wrapped in silk, spotlight, and perfection. To the world, she was untouchable elegance, but inside Hitsville's buzzing hallways, the whispers told a very different story. Born in Detroit in 1944, Diana rose from the Brewster Douglas housing projects to become the shining face of the Supremes.
People act real, loud, and they're really pumped up. And I was telling Peter Rochelle, they didn't know, not many people I didn't think knew our songs and stuff, but it was incredible, I think they liked the funk.
Berry Gordy's personal masterpiece polished to flawless perfection for the world to adore. She glided through Motown like royalty, but the old school musicians used to joke, Diana didn't climb the ladder bent toward her. That's when the rumors started flying. The same ones Rick James said he'd heard long before his own fame exploded. He claimed those secrets were buried so deep that even die-hard fans today wouldn't believe what really happened. Rick talked about mysterious late-night meetings behind Berry Gordy's office door, ones that went on way past any official session. He mentioned the drawn blinds, the quiet footsteps, and the way Diana would leave that room looking like someone who already owned the future. Rick didn't point fingers. He didn't have to. The Motown gossip machine had already created its own secret language for the kind of power Diana Ross and Berry Gordy shared. The connection between Diana Ross and Berry Gordy wasn't just gossip. People swore it shaped the Supremes, Motown itself, and even the sound of 1960s pop culture. But the whispers didn't end behind closed doors. They followed Diana everywhere. Into rehearsals, down the echoing hallways of Hitsville, and right into the backseat of her sleek limousine. Rick James once wrote, half bragging and half hinting, that one Motown diva kept a secret list of powerful men she allowed into her limo after shows. He never dropped her name, but he didn't need to. Everyone around Motown already knew whose car stayed parked long after the fans had gone home. By the 1970s, dancers would joke that if Diana's limo rolled out at 2 in the morning, that drive wasn't about heading home. It was business, and maybe something deeper. Some said it was networking. Others called it survival in a ruthless industry. But Rick, he called it Diana's second stage. Once she left Motown and stepped into Hollywood's golden light, her legend only got more magnetic and more mysterious. Without Motown's strict image control, Diana found herself surrounded by a new crowd, film directors, producers, and young stars who both admired and feared her power. People in the studios whispered that she had a presence so strong it made even confident men lose their composure. One casting assistant from Paramount said, "She didn't seduce anyone, she made them open up themselves." Hollywood couldn't quite handle that kind of force, so they turned her into a living myth. The woman whose stare outlasted careers, whose charm could light up or silence an entire room. Rick James saw it himself, and in his final years, he admitted that Diana Ross inspired him to start the list and the legendary 5 Motown nymphos. Motown didn't guard Diana Ross because she was reckless. They guarded her because they were afraid. Afraid the world would see just how much control she actually had. Afraid the truth would crack that perfect, glittering image they'd spent years polishing. Behind the gowns and diamonds, there was something Motown couldn't contain. Not grace, but power. The kind that made even the label's biggest names nervous. To Rick James, Diana wasn't a scandal. She was the blueprint for every rumor Motown ever tried to hide. She proved that image and reality were never the same thing. She showed that greatness doesn't shine without shadows. Even after the Supremes' last song faded from the charts, the whispers about her never stopped. Midnight limo rides, quiet alliances, and secret connections that flipped careers overnight. Her world stayed alive through gossip no one could confirm, but no one could forget either. Rick used to say, "Motown protected Diana Ross so hard, you just knew there was something worth protecting." Maybe those stories were truth, or maybe they were smoke. But either way, they turned her into something more than a singer. She wasn't just the supreme, she was the temptation, the mystery, the name that still makes Motown fans lower their voices when they talk about the past. And in Rick's version, Diana wasn't just a voice, she was the first storm. But if Diana was the storm Motown tried to contain, what came next hit like lightning. Because when Tina Marie showed up in 1979, she didn't just walk into Motown, she shook it. Tina wasn't known for chaos on purpose, but she carried it like perfume, and the whispers said Berry Gordy didn't sign her because she sounded soulful. He signed her because he couldn't ignore her fire. Berry Gordy didn't sign Tina Marie just because of her voice, he signed her because she already lived like a rock star. Rick James saw it the second they met. "She's trouble," he said, "the real kind." But at Motown, trouble was just another word for legend. From the moment Tina walked into Studio B, the air changed. It was March 28, 1979, during the recording of "I'm a Sucker for Your Love." People swore she stepped into the booth with that signature fire. Denim jacket, lace top, hair still wet from a quick rinse, eyes blazing like she owned the place. She dropped her bag, grabbed the mic, and told the room, "Turn the lights down. It's too bright to feel anything." When the lights dimmed, her energy took over. Everyone said the vibe in that studio was electric, like she could bend the music around her. Within weeks, stories followed her everywhere. Sightings at late-night lounges, wild laughter spilling out of booths, and that unshakable rumor that she had everyone's attention without even trying. By the summer of 1979, Motown execs were panicking. Tina wasn't the soft, sweet soul singer they'd expected. She was bold, unpredictable, and alive in a way the label couldn't script. Meetings got called, memos started flying around about image control, but someone leaked one to Rick James, and he couldn't stop laughing. "Good luck controlling that," he said. Then came the night that sealed her legend, the Lake Tahoe shoot in June 1979. The band was filming promo footage on a speedboat as the sun set over the lake. Witnesses said Tina turned that calm evening into a scene no one forgot. Cameras rolled, the crew froze, and just like that, Tina Marie became the storm Motown never saw coming. The Lake Tahoe footage became the talk of Motown, so suggestive that the director shouted "cut" and demanded it be destroyed. But the real story started later that night, around 8:23 p.m., when Tina Marie and the band's bassist vanished into the boat's cabin. Some claim they were rehearsing lines, others swore they heard laughter and the windows fogging up. What actually happened? Nobody ever said for sure. Or maybe they just didn't dare. When Tina and the bassist finally reappeared at 9:05, people whispered her lipstick was gone, his shirt was a mess, and Motown's higher-ups lost their minds. They allegedly warned everyone to stay silent or risk losing their jobs. By late 1980, Tina's reputation was everywhere. Wild, unpredictable, unstoppable. Rick James started teasing that she had studio moods, a phrase that became part of Motown legend. Then came Fire and Desire. Rumor says that during a November 1980 session, Rick and Tina disappeared behind the booth curtain for nearly 40 minutes while the band waited awkwardly. When they returned, they said they were just working on harmonies, but the drummer laughed. "If that was harmonies, I've been playing my whole life wrong." Their chemistry burned through every performance, impossible to fake and impossible to ignore. On October 21st, 1980, during rehearsal at the Santa Monica Civic Center, Rick pulled Tina close for the song's final note. Too close! A flash went off at the perfect second, catching her daring glance and his hand resting on her waist. Motown moved fast, seizing the camera and film before the image could spread. But the story still did. Even executives admitted privately, if that picture got out, the whole country would have known. By 1981, Rick and Tina weren't just collaborators. They were partners in chaos, fire, and one of Motown's wildest rumors ever. Rick James and Tina Marie toured like twin hurricanes, unstoppable and electric. She hit the stage in silk and leather, he strutted out in lace and boots, and together, they set every crowd on fire. Crew members swore the two would vanish between sets for private warm-ups, but everyone knew that wasn't just about singing. One backup singer said she once walked in on them holding each other so close it didn't look romantic. It looked like two people clinging to the same storm. Whether it was love, lust, or pure creative energy, Motown made one thing clear: the public could never know. Then came February 14th, 1982, Valentine's Day in New Orleans. Tina walked on stage in a white satin dress that turned see-through under the lights. One stunned reviewer wrote, "It wasn't a dress, it was a confession." Backstage, Motown's PR team panicked while Tina just laughed and said, "It's just a body. Everyone's got one." By August 1983, her legend had fully taken shape. At a wild party in Rick's Sherman Oaks mansion, guests claimed Tina danced in the center of the room while Princess Do Me baby blasted from the speakers. A guitarist swore she pulled a silk scarf from her pocket and tied it around a man's wrist as the crowd went wild, and Rick shouted, "That's my girl." Motown executives were in chaos, scrambling to rewrite her image and reshape her interviews, but it was too late. Tina wasn't built for control, she was built for combustion. She lived the same way she sang, raw, fierce, and unapologetically herself. By 1984, the label gave up trying to cage her fire. No one could, not even Rick, and that's why he said it best. Tina Marie was the only woman I knew who could burn down a room just by walking into it. Rumor or truth, it didn't even matter anymore. The myth was stronger than both. On Rick James's secret list, Martha Reeves wasn't chaos or controversy. She was mystery wrapped in fire. Her voice could electrify an entire stadium. But backstage, her nights became the most whispered tales of the Motown Revue era. To the public, she was elegance. To the insiders, she was pure voltage. Musicians from that time still drop their voices when her name comes up, not out of fear, but out of respect. They'd say, "Martha didn't just sing Heat Wave, she lived it," and they meant it like a warning. The whispers started early, when Martha and the Vandellas were rising fast as one of Motown's signature acts. On tour, she picked up a habit the crew called the Midnight Vanish. One minute she'd be fixing her makeup in the dressing room. The next, gone. Maybe through a hallway, maybe down a hotel corridor, always with someone walking a few steps behind. When she returned, she glowed, sharper, bolder, like she'd stepped into the dark and come back owning it. Her bandmates said she had a switch. Once the show ended, another Martha appeared. On stage, she was composed and radiant. Off stage, she was fire in human form. Some nights she laughed too loud, flirted too easily, and refused to shrink herself to fit Motown's polished image. Other nights she was silent, dangerously silent, with a smile that could make anyone lose their words. Motown couldn't label her, couldn't contain her, and every attempt to polish her just made the rumors spread faster. Old tour stories still float around. Martha slipping into hotel lounges long after curfew, surrounded by musicians from every band, all drawn to her like moths to a flame. Martha Reeves didn't chase attention. Attention chased her. People called her magnetic, intoxicating, and untouchable. She had this way of leaning forward when she spoke, eyes locked like a challenge, daring the room to keep up with her energy. Most couldn't. One former backup singer said, "When Martha looked at you, you didn't just feel seen, you felt chosen." Rumor had it Martha lived by her own rules after hours. No handlers, no bodyguards, no executives telling her what to do. She only surrounded herself with musicians and never suits. People said she trusted artists because they understood her fire, while business types just wanted to contain it. When she closed her dressing room door, everyone knew to look the other way. With Martha, privacy wasn't just a boundary, it was power that filled the room. The most famous whisper came from an unnamed hotel during a major tour. No one remembers the date, but the story's still alive. Supposedly, Martha held a private rehearsal in her suite after midnight. The hallway stayed silent except for bursts of laughter and music drifting through the door. The next morning, 3 musicians showed up to breakfast looking drained. One road manager joked they looked baptized. When someone asked Martha what happened, she just smiled and said, "Creative realignment." The tales kept coming. A studio session where she demanded the lights dim and candles lit because a song like this needs heat. Another time, she refused to sing until certain people left the room, sending one furious producer storming out. Rick James admired that fearlessness and maybe envied it too. He said Martha Reeves was the one woman in Motown who didn't play the game. She rewrote it. She had a hunger for life so bold it scared the executives who tried to keep her tamed. Rick James used to joke that Martha Reeves could have literally set Motown on fire if she wanted to. When her name reached Hollywood, the rumors weren't about scandal. They were about presence. Casting directors swore they'd never seen anyone command a room like her. One said, she had a voice that came from the soul and a stare that came from somewhere far more dangerous. People whispered that Martha shared an intense spark with powerful men in the industry, but no one ever spoke those names out loud. Not from fear, but from respect. To talk about Martha was to talk about electricity itself. Old Detroit musicians still tell the story of the night she made an entire stage shake. No one can agree on what she did, just that the crowd froze. Someone fainted, and the band lost rhythm because every eye in the room was locked on her. Some said it felt less like a concert and more like a spiritual surge no one could explain. By the early 1970s, Motown tried to clean up her image. Fewer late nights, more interviews, more smiles, but Martha Reeves was never built for cages. The more they tried to polish her, the more her legend grew. Her nights out became folklore. Musicians whispered that she could walk into any club and own it without saying a word. Strangers would stop mid-conversation just to feel her energy fill the room. Rick James said it best. Some women flirt. Martha radiates. It's not just attraction, it's fire. That's why she earned her spot on his secret list. Not out of scandal or shame, but because she carried a magnetic power Motown could never package or control. Long after the music faded, people still whispered not about what she did, but about how she made everyone around her feel. Martha Reeves might have been the night itself, but before Diana Ross ever wore the crown, Motown had its first queen, Mary Wells. Yet the stories whispered about her didn't live in the spotlight. They thrived in the shadows. Old Motown musicians still tell those tales in hushed tones, usually after a few drinks, when the truth starts to bend just enough to sound believable. Mary Wells was smooth like smoke, impossible to catch, impossible to forget. One bass player said, "You never saw where she came from or where she went after midnight. My guy turned her into America's sweetheart, the angelic face of early Motown. Berry Gordy guarded her image like gold, shaping her into something pure and perfect for the public eye. But behind the glamour, the whispers told a different story. Crew members secretly called her the Smoky Siren. Not because she partied wild, but because she carried a quiet heat that made people forget their words mid-sentence. She had what insiders joked was night shift energy. When most artists ended their shows and went to sleep, Mary's night was just beginning. Tour bus drivers said she was always the last to return, and dancers whispered that she liked inviting musicians up to her suite to talk arrangements, even when the next session wasn't until the afternoon. One road manager said, Mary didn't just walk into a room, she arrived like she brought her own lighting with her, and the whispers kept spreading. The most famous one came from a Motown tour in the mid-1960s. They said Mary would host late-night listening sessions in her hotel room. The lights turned low, a record spinning on a small turntable, and the faint scent of wine and cigarette smoke floating into the hallway. It wasn't chaos, it was atmosphere. And no one at Motown could recreate it but her. Sometimes one guest slipped quietly into Mary Wells' hotel room. Sometimes two. No one ever confirmed what happened inside, but once that door closed, the music faded, and the rumors started walking on their own. Motown hated every whisper. They wanted Mary the angel, while Mary wanted Mary the free woman. Insiders used a phrase for the pull she had, the relationship web. They said Mary sparked with people whose voices matched her soul. Velvet tones, heartbreak in every note. Studio engineers noticed she gravitated toward artists who poured their hearts out in the middle of the night, men who could write a love song at 3 a.m. and confess their regrets by 3:05. Smokey Robinson's name floated through those stories more than once, wrapped in hints of something warm, risky, and too real for Motown's perfect image. It said the label's PR team even kept a secret red file on her, filled with notes, whispers, and half-truths they didn't want anyone to see. Some say it sat locked in Berry Gordy's office, others swear it vanished when Motown moved to LA. Either way, the legend never died. One of the oldest rumors claimed that during an out-of-town show, security found Mary sitting barefoot on a hotel floor with two musicians, just laughing, singing old gospel tunes, and sipping from paper cups. Nothing scandalous, just real. But in Motown's world of control and image, even that was too unfiltered, too human. The story was hushed instantly. No reports, no witnesses, just silence. As the years passed, her image shifted. People stopped calling her the sweetheart and started calling her chaotic. Some said heartbreak made her unpredictable. Others said she simply felt too deeply. But everyone agreed on one thing. Anyone who got close to Mary Wells never left unchanged. Mary Wells carried her mystery like an aura, soft, smoky, and impossible to ignore. One backup singer said her voice could sound gentle one minute and dangerous the next, especially after midnight. Rick James spoke about her years later with total respect. Mary was the original rebel, he said. Long before any of us showed up, she was already breaking Motown's rules. When Rick talked about his secret 5 Motown nymphos list, Mary's name was always the quietest, but also the heaviest. Her story didn't scream, it lingered. She didn't flirt with danger, she lived beside it. And Motown worked hard to make sure the audience never saw that side of her. Then came Tammy Terrell, the one Motown never wanted associated with scandal. She was supposed to be the angelic voice next to Marvin Gaye, the bright spirit behind songs about pure, endless love. But the whispers from inside the studios painted a much more complicated picture. Tammy lived inside a storm, and the people closest to her only pulled her deeper into it. Musicians said she had a light that didn't match her chaos. Radiant on stage, but restless off it. She craved connection, fell fast, and sometimes trusted people who carried danger wherever they went. One of the most whispered stories tied her to James Brown, the godfather of soul, a man known for his fierce control over those around him. Tammy met him while she was still young, and whatever happened between them became the story Motown tried hardest to bury. People said that sometimes she'd show up to rehearsals with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Dancers remembered moments when a loud voice made her freeze, just for a second, like she was holding back more than anyone would ever understand. Some said James Brown was possessive, others said he was harsh. Nobody ever knew the full truth, but the whispers alone were enough for Motown to quietly step in and keep Tammy Terrell close under their wing, protecting her the best they could. Then came David Ruffin, the man everyone warned people about too late. Brilliant, charming, and dangerous all at once, he had an energy that filled every room. Tammy fell for him anyway. Ruffin was already married, but that didn't stop the connection from sparking. Everyone felt the tension between them. It was magnetic, alive, impossible to ignore. Their chemistry wasn't just emotional, it was something deeper, something the whole label whispered about. Dancers said they couldn't stand within 3 feet of each other without the air tightening. People described it like static heat, so strong it made onlookers uneasy, like they were witnessing something private. The first big wave of rumors hit in early 1967. Crew members claimed Tammy and Ruffin vanished backstage for nearly half an hour between sets, long enough to cause panic, short enough for gossip to explode. When they returned, both looked breathless, energized, eyes lit up like they touched lightning. No one dared ask questions, but everyone started talking. Whispers said they had little rituals before every show, private moments that fueled their connection. One backup singer recalled a recording session where they couldn't stop touching, not in wild ways, just small, constant gestures, his hand resting on her waist, fingers brushing her shoulder, Ruffin leaning close to whisper in her ear even when others were around. It wasn't scandal, it was intensity. Everyone watching could feel the fire between them. Then came what became known as the Detroit Night, a rumor born from jealousy and the kind of passion Motown never wanted to make public. The story goes that one night, Tammy Terrell caught David Ruffin flirting with a young Motown assistant. She walked right up to him, stared him down, and said something so sharp the whole room went silent. He froze, and the assistant quietly slipped away. Later that night, people swore they saw Tammy and Ruffin sitting in a parked car behind Hitsville, silhouettes moving in a way that didn't look like arguing at all. Their connection was so powerful that other artists refused to rehearse with them in the same room. One member of the Miracles said they didn't even need to touch. The whole air changed when they got close. By mid-1967, the whispers were everywhere. Studio crew claimed the two once showed up late, clothes slightly wrinkled, her lipstick smudged, and Ruffin still fixing his collar. They were laughing. That quiet, knowing laughter that says more than words ever could. People describe their chemistry as electric, calling it addictive, unstable, and magnetic. It wasn't just romance. It was lightning bottled inside two people who couldn't control the storm. Even decades later, Motown veterans still say Tammy and Ruffin didn't date. They devoured each other. There was even a whisper about Tammy's lost diary, a small journal she supposedly filled with songs, confessions, heartbreaks, and memories of the men who changed her life. No one ever saw it. Some said Marvin Gaye read it after she passed. Others believed Motown locked it away forever to protect her legacy. Maybe it never existed at all. Maybe it was just a metaphor for the pain she never got to sing about. Rick James never met Tammy. She was gone before his time. But even he spoke about her like a legend. Tammy wasn't an angel, he said once. She loved hard, lived hard, and left a story Motown could never erase. Tammy was no angel, Rick James once said. She loved hard, lived hard, and carried secrets Motown never wanted to see the light. He didn't say it as gossip, he said it with grief, the kind that comes from recognizing another soul that burned too bright, too fast. Some of the oldest whispers claim that Tammy's heartbreaks and the chaos in her love life weakened her long before her illness ever showed. Music historians rarely repeat that theory, it sounds too mystical. But the old Motown musicians still say it quietly. Tammy didn't just die from sickness, she died from life. A life that hit too hard, too soon, and surrounded her with danger she could never escape. Her tragedy made her untouchable, her death made her immortal, and her silence became one of Motown's darkest mysteries. Rick James spent his later years describing Motown as a place with two faces, shining like a classroom by day and burning like a secret world by night. On TV, the label sold perfection, polite smiles, clean morals, flawless stars. But behind those closed studio doors, Rick said, it was a pressure cooker of ego, rebellion, passion, and midnight chaos. He insisted that the women on his secret list weren't punchlines. They were truths, Motown's hidden side. They carried fire, freedom, and a raw kind of power the label didn't know how to control. None of it fit the spotless image needed to sell records, so the label buried it beneath perfect lighting and practiced smiles. Rick hated the word people used for them. They weren't wild, he said. They were free. And freedom, real, unapologetic freedom, always scared people more than scandal ever could. In Rick's eyes, Motown didn't protect those women because they were fragile. It protected them because they were dangerous. Motown didn't protect those women because they were fragile. It protected them because they were too powerful, too magnetic, too alive, too impossible to contain. They lived louder than the system built to control them, and Rick James said it best, a line musicians still whisper today, they weren't women Motown controlled, they were women Motown feared. The label's brightest legends lit up the stage, but their real lives burned even brighter in the shadows. The polished smiles, the sparkling gowns, all part of the image. But the rumors, the late-night secrets, the whispered stories passed from one generation to the next. Those were the pieces the world was never supposed to hear. Now that you've heard Rick's version, the question's on you. Which of these women do you think Motown tried hardest to hide? Whose midnight stories got buried the deepest? Whose truth was too real, too raw, and too wild for the spotlight? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know which legend shocked you the most and whose story you think still has pages missing. And if you're ready for more hidden history, more forbidden files, more stories the music industry hoped you'd never find, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Because this isn't the end of the story. It's just the door creaking open to the next one. See you in the next video.